reflections, which talks about taking figures and flipping them over an axis. In this case, you can look at the two figures and see that they were reflected over the y-axis. Notice that the points are equally distant from the axis that they were reflected over. So in this case, point C prime and point C are in fact 6 units away from the y-axis. Point A and A prime are both 3 units away from the y-axis. To reflect something over an axis, all you're going to do is take that and flip it over that particular line. Here's an example. We're going to take this figure here, point ABC, or triangle ABC, and we're going to flip it over the axis. Notice that in this figure we have A being 3 and 1 unit above the x-axis and 3 units from the y-axis. Starting from 0, we're going to count 3 units away from the y, and then we're going to count 1 unit up. There's our point A. Point B starts 7 units away from the y-axis and 3 units up. So we're going to go in the opposite direction over the y-axis, 7 units and 3 units up, and that should be point B prime. Point C is 6 units from the axis and 5 units up. So we're going to go 6 units from the y-axis on the opposite direction and 5 units up. So there's our point C prime. We can label it A prime, B prime, and C prime. We can take this figure, but notice if we just slide it like we did in the last lesson, it won't work. So we actually do have to flip it. In this case, I'm going to flip it left to right, and it should line up perfectly with the other figure. Now that we've reflected it over the y-axis, we're going to take the same figure, ABC, and now we're going to reflect it over the x-axis. It's going to be the same process, only now instead of it being the same distance from the y, it's going to be talking about the x-axis. We're going to move it vertically. So now we're looking at point A as it responds to the x-axis. It's 1 unit away. It's still 3 units from the y, but we're going to count this way, and we're going to mark our point A prime there. Point B prime is 3 units from the x-axis. We're going to mark that as B. And then C prime is 5 units, so we're going to count 5 and mark it there. Again, if we reflect it, notice when we drag this figure down, we have to flip it, only this time we're flipping it upside down. And then we can label it A double prime, B double prime, and C double prime. Here's our figures. Now what we're going to do is we're going to write our 6 new ordered pairs for the A prime, B prime, C prime, and the double primes in the bottom triangle as well. And we're going to look to see if we notice anything that occurs when we reflect something over the x or y axis. Hit pause and do that now. The reflection piece over the y-axis, you should have gotten the points -3, 1, -7, 3, and -6, 5. Notice that the digits stay exactly the same. However, when you're reflecting it over the y-axis, the y-coordinate stays exactly the same, but the x-coordinate is the one that changes to its opposite. So 7 becomes -7, 6 becomes -6. Taking a look at the next example, we had double primes. In this case, we reflected it over the x-axis. So the x-coordinate is the one that stays the same, and the y-coordinate changes to its opposite. So +1 becomes -1, +3 becomes -3, and +5 becomes -5. Examples. Here are 3 sets of ordered pairs. We went from E to E prime, B to B prime, and C to C prime. If you look at what changed, can you match what axis the points were reflected over to find the new point? You should see that point E was -5, 6. The y-coordinate stays the same, which means that point was reflected over the y-axis. Point B, the x-coordinate stayed the same, but the y-coordinate changed to its opposite. Because the x-coordinate stayed the same, it was reflected over the x-axis. See if you can determine what axis point C was reflected over. You should see that point C, the x-coordinate, stayed the same as 7, And therefore, because the x-coordinate stayed the same, it was reflected over the x-axis. To complete the translations worksheet, bring in any questions that you may have, and check out the website if you want to review this video again.